Hi, ArcfieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Wednesday morning, August the 30th. Hurricane Idalia just made landfall in the Big Bend region of Florida's Gulf Coast. It climbed all the way up to Category 4, major hurricane status. It had maximum sustained winds around 130 miles per hour as it made landfall. Again, just a few minutes ago here, we're about at the 8 o'clock hour in Eastern time. Franklin continues to move to the north and east. It will make its closest approach to the island of Bermuda, producing tropical storm conditions there this morning, and then it continues to move to the north and east out into the open waters of the North Atlantic. Meanwhile, Idalia will slowly weaken over the next 24 to 36 hours or so and reach the Carolina coastline later Thursday and then meander off the coast for several days. Here's the latest infrared satellite imagery loop, and again, Hurricane Idalia climbed all the way up to Category 4 status, just made landfall. We're right around the 8 o'clock hour here, Eastern time, and it climbed up to Category 4 with sustained winds of 130 miles per hour. The good news is it's moving fairly rapidly, about 18 miles per hour to the north-northeast. The faster it can get out of there, the better for the northern part of Florida. Again, it looks like it'll take a track towards the Georgia, South Carolina coastal region right here, and then finally off the Carolina coastline by later tomorrow, and then meander out over the western Atlantic. Whether it loops back around towards the East Coast in a weakened state, still a little too early to determine, but it certainly will meander. The big player is developing upper level ridging that will slow its movement to the north and grind it to a halt after it reaches the state of North Carolina, and then pretty much surround the remnants of Idalia, not allowing it to go anywhere really. It'll again meander off the west over the western Atlantic for several days. Meanwhile, Franklin getting absorbed, getting captured by an upper level trough over the southeastern part of Canada, will continue on a push out into the open waters of the North Atlantic. Well, here's the latest positioning of Idalia and Franklin from a couple of hours ago by the National Hurricane Center. Again, a Category 4 storm upon the landfall right in the Big Bend region of Florida within the last 30 minutes or so. Again, we're just past the 8 o'clock hour here Eastern time. Looks like it'll continue on a track like this, reach the Carolina coastline by later tomorrow, and then just meander off the coast probably in this region here for several days. Meanwhile, Franklin will move over the open waters of the North Atlantic. It could eventually have an impact at Iceland, maybe even the United Kingdom. Let me just clear the deck here for a moment here. This is the island of Bermuda right here. Not a direct hit. Moving by it to the north and west, it will produce some tropical storm conditions over Bermuda this morning, but then Franklin moves out over the open waters of the North Atlantic. But again, Idalia did in fact climb to major hurricane status, reaching Category 4, made landfall this morning. And here's the actual storm track prediction by NOAA's National Hurricane Center. Again, it slowly weakens, reaches southern Georgia as a hurricane, but then tropical storm status by the time it reaches the South Carolina coastline, and then moves off the North Carolina coastline. At the same time, high pressure ridging just builds into the mid-Atlantic region, the northeast U.S. over the next couple of days here. By the time the remnants of Idalia sit off the Carolina coastline, it'll be completely enveloped by a strong upper level ridge, and that will prevent any farther northward movement, and really it'll diminish any movement whatsoever, and it'll just tend to meander around for several days. Whether or not it impacts Bermuda or loops back around and impacts somewhere along the U.S. East Coast remains to be seen. It will be in a weakened state for sure, but it'll be meandering over the western Atlantic for several days. So again, landfall earlier this morning as a Category 4 right around the Big Bend region of Florida. And here's the storm track as predicted by NOAA's National Hurricane Center for Hurricane Franklin. Right now, its closest approach to Bermuda, tropical storm conditions on that island. It maintains hurricane status for a couple of days here as it moves out into the open waters of the North Atlantic. Eventually, could have an impact on Iceland or the United Kingdom way down the road here. And the reason it's pulling off is there's an upper level trough that is moving off to the east here, and there's a broad southwesterly flow of air on the front side of that upper level trough, and that is helping to steer Franklin harmlessly once it gets by Bermuda out into the colder waters of the North Atlantic. We'll see if eventually it does have an impact across the pond here over the United Kingdom, or perhaps on the way towards that area. It may have an impact on Iceland. Obviously, it will be in a weakened state if it does. Well, let's wrap up with the surface forecast maps from last night's 6C run of the GFS. It's the operational version of the GFS, and most of the models were pretty consistent with a landfall right in the Big Bend region here of Florida, and indeed that turned out to be the case. Again, it made landfall as a Category 4 with maximum sustained winds around 130 miles per hour right in this area right here. And again, most of the models were pretty consistent with that and not too different from one another with that prediction. Let's move forward here and watch as it moves to the north and east. And by the time we get to tomorrow morning, it'll be right along the Carolina coastline, probably the southeastern part of the North Carolina coastline, as a tropical storm at this particular time. And here we go. Here's that very strong upper level ridge and a surface high pressure area over the Great Lakes by early tomorrow. That is playing a major role in pretty much putting a halt to the northward advance of Idalia over the state of North Carolina, and it completely swallows up the remnants of Idalia and doesn't allow it to move anywhere for several days. I mean, virtually anywhere. It may meander around the western Atlantic for several days, and whether or not it meanders towards Bermuda or kind of loops back around to the U.S. East Coast remains to be seen. Certainly something to monitor. Let's keep going forward. This same high pressure system, by the time we get to Friday morning, sitting right on top of the mid-Atlantic northeast U.S. and looks like very nice weather pattern setting up thanks to that high for the mid-Atlantic, for the northeast U.S. for the Labor Day weekend. It looks like really beginning on Thursday, lasting all the way into Monday. This high pressure will be in control over this part of the nation. Now, notice at this particular time, the backside of the high right here as of Friday morning, starting to see a long fetch of southwesterly flow of air. This is warmer than normal conditions and will overspread much of the nation, first developing by the end of the work week here in the middle of the nation, and then that warmer than normal conditions, that warmer than normal pattern will spread to the east, and we'll get back to probably 90-degree highs by the time we get to Labor Day in places like D.C., Philadelphia, New York City. Let's continue to advance here in time with the 60 run of the GFS. Again, here's Idalia just kind of meandering around the western Atlantic. This is Saturday morning forecast map. Here we get all the way into Sunday morning, kind of a reinforcing high pressure area moving into the eastern U.S. again. Very strong southwesterly flow of air pushing very warm air for this time of the year, and by this time we'll be in the early part of September over the Great Lakes. It takes a couple of days to reach the eastern seaboard, but again, by Labor Day it looks like 90-degree highs, maybe even in the 90s in places like D.C. by the time we get to Monday afternoon. Now, let's keep moving forward here, and here we go all the way into Labor Day. And here we go, that high pressure still in control over the eastern third of the nation. Very warm weather pattern setting up for the eastern half of the nation by the time we get to Sunday and Monday. And here we go. This is the remnants of Idalia as of Monday morning. Let's go out another 24 hours or so, and it kind of moves off the edge here by the time we get to Tuesday, but something we'll have to monitor. High pressure remains in control really from Thursday into Tuesday of next week across much of the eastern third of the nation. So again, repeating, Hurricane Idalia climbed all the way up to Category 4 major classification level and made landfall early this morning right in the Big Bend region of Florida's Gulf Coast. That's it for now. For ArcfieldWeather.com, this has been meteorologist Paul Dorian.